Joining me now is Patrick Nelson. He is on the NYS Democratic Committee for Saratoga County, 113th Assembly District. He also ran for Congress as a Justice Democrat in New York and wants to talk about how undemocratic the voting is in the state of New York. Patrick, welcome back to the Young Turks. How you doing?
Cenk, it's a great honor to be back. Thanks for having me, and thanks for having me on short notice with this deadline that we're bearing down on right now.
Yeah, no problem. So what's the deadline, Patrick?
So on May 22nd, the State Democratic Committee is going to convene in Albany, New York, and is going to decide the rules for the 2020 New York State Democratic primary, which is slated for April 28th. Now, Chairman Jay Jacobs is putting together this plan to ensure that New York has the second most delegates of any state in the contest, and we come at the end of April. So if you forgive the sports metaphor, Iowa and New Hampshire are the regular season. After Super Tuesday, we get into the playoffs, and New York might very well be the Super Bowl of this whole thing that decides the final nominee. So that's the stakes that we're looking at right now. So we're slated to have the second most delegates, second only to California. But New York, while we're reforming our election laws, we've got early voting now for the first time this year. We still have the longest by far deadline to join a party or change your enrollment, which can be as short as 6 months in terms of presidential primaries and as long as 11 months to the day for a state Democratic or Republican primary in, say, September.
That seems crazy. They don't block voting like that, even in Alabama or Georgia, the most red states that you could imagine. If you can't switch parties until, like, if you have to make up your mind 11 months before an election, well, you're not even going to be thinking about that election. It's not even going to be on your radar in any way, shape, or form. So you don't know whether you like the candidate that you'd like to switch to vote in that election. Is this the most restrictive law in the whole country?
We are 50 out of 50 in terms of states. And as a friend of mine who's an organizer in Glens Falls likes to say, we're the weird ones. You, me, the people that do this stuff in the off season, you hear it ahead of time. Most people are working their jobs, they're taking care of their family, and they might start paying attention when Iowa and New Hampshire happens. They find a candidate they like, if it's Beto or Bernie or Biden or anybody else that's running with a B name, and they decide they want to join the Democratic Party. Whoops, you had to do it on October 11th of the previous year. So that opportunity is passed. And then we as Democrats miss the opportunity to grow our party through the primary because people might want to join up and go, this candidate speaks to me. I want to join the Democratic Party. Whoops, too late. Sorry, can't come in. How are we supposed to grow our party? How are we supposed to, especially in places like mine? I'm in a rural district, a red area. We need more Democrats in so that we can get rid of corporate Wall Street sellouts and have actual representation.
So before we get to what you can do about it, why do they do this system? What's the point of being that restrictive?
So I think the argument was that they don't want what's called party raiding to happen, which is basically where somebody like connives to go into a primary and vote for the least electable person, as if we can decide who's electable or not, right? If you were going to raid a primary in 1992, you would have supported Bill Clinton, who wound up being the president. If you were to raid a primary in 2016, you might have supported Donald Trump, and how well did that work out? So this doesn't really happen that well. So I think that's the justification for it. But ultimately, if you look at the research, this isn't a thing that happens at any level. And it seems to happen regardless of what the regime is, whether you're an open primary, a closed primary, a long deadline, or short deadline. The incidence of party raiding is pretty uniform across all states. So even if it were a problem, which there's not a lot of evidence to suggest that it was, this doesn't solve it. All it does is disenfranchise genuine voters who might want to join a party. So, and it's on the state party to make this decision, because the ultimate authority actually on who's allowed to vote in a primary, because of Supreme Court precedent, rests with the party, not with the legislature. The party is empowered to expand the class of people that can vote within its primary. And we're being required to actually under DNC rules. Like, we're so bad that the DNC is basically going, New York, stop screwing around. This is ridiculous. You're suppressing voters. And so in their rules, they want it to be same day. On election day, you should be able to change your party or join a party. We can't do that under the New York Constitution, but we're at least trying to get it so that the voter registration deadline and the deadline to join a party are the same day, like most people already think they are. And then they only find out after the fact that registration won't go through for another 12 months.
So Patrick, I have a hunch that Part of the reason why the voting might be so restrictive is not because they're concerned about Republicans coming to vote in the Democratic primaries, but because they're concerned about protecting incumbents. And if you have less voter participation in primaries, you'll protect incumbents better.
Would politicians craft the rules to better serve their maintaining of power? Is that a thing that happens in American politics?
No, well, I'm sure it would never happen. It's certainly not in the Democratic Party.
No.
Well, let's talk about the solution. What can people do about it?
So we need folks to go to letallDemsVote.org, LETALLDEMSVOTE.org, and there's a public comment period that's happening right now until May 18th, where registered Democrats in the state of New York, so those of you out there, please go do this right now, can submit a public comment, becomes part of the record, becomes persuasive when we get to that Albany meeting. If you want to go a step further, and I encourage you to do this because your state committee reps, of which I am one, don't hear from you enough, right? They're elected to represent you, but when's the last time you talked to them? Do you know who they are? Because they're supposed to represent you. So sign up. We'll help you get in touch with your state party rep and let them know your viewpoint on this and get you involved in the party process, because we got to shine a light on this. Important decisions happen at the party level, and we got to get folks involved in that decision-making process. So you can put a public comment in, sign up to help us whip votes, share this on social media. We've got a very short window, but we think we can get it done. We've got a coalition of progressives, of moderates, of more conservative Democrats who all believe in democracy. We need to expand that with the votes and get this done. And also, if we don't get it done, we might lose delegates, right? The DNC could take away delegates from New York, or they could force, this is crazy, Cenk. They have the power to force the state party in New York to run a privately funded primary, not allowing the taxpayers to fund it. We would have to put it on ourselves to make it comport with the DNC rules. And that could cost $10 million or more, which even if we had it in the Democratic Party, we should be spending that money beating Republicans, not on, suppressing voters because we don't want to change the rules.
So if people go to that website, you said, it's tough to get it done, but you think you can. What is it that they do that makes a difference in quote unquote getting it done? What does getting it done mean?
Okay, there's a required public comment period for the delegate selection rules. So anybody in state of New York, any Democrat can put their comment into the record that goes on a list that goes to the DNC. We on the committee can see it, so we can say, hey, listen, there's 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 comments here. Almost all of them are New York Democrats saying they want to get this done. That's an onus on us. And then they can also, this is even better, sign up. We'll put them in touch with their representatives. Just like you call a member of the legislature or you call a congressperson, you can email or call your state party rep and say, hello, representative, I'm so-and-so, I'm a Democrat in your district, and I'm concerned about the Let All Democrats Vote amendment. I want you to support it, and I'm going to be watching to make sure you do that because this is what Democrats in the state of New York want. So this is a lobbying effort. I
got you. And what happens on May 22nd?
We vote. There'll be a debate on the floor. We'll go back and forth. This is actually the first meeting where there's going to be a formal recorded vote by electronic device. So everybody can be held accountable for how they vote. So if your rep doesn't vote the way you want, you can find out. And then, so we treat it like a legislature. We get this resolution passed. And if the resolution is passed, we guarantees that if you register as a Democrat up to 25 days before the April 28th primary, you can vote in that primary. But ultimately, it's an incentive for the legislature and the governor to change this legislatively so it applies to all parties and all primaries. But we as a Democratic Party can at least fix it so that the New York State Democratic Party isn't participating in voter suppression, even if the state law of New York suppresses voters. We can opt out of that voter suppression as a party, and we need to do that.
So Patrick, we talked about Democrat and Republican parties, but New York's a little bit more complicated than that. First of all states are more complicated because a lot of people register as independents. But then in New York, you also have the Working Families Party. So what happened if you're registered in Working Families Party or as an independent? Does that mean even though you might be really progressive, maybe even more progressive than the average Democrat, that you're not allowed to vote for Democrats?
No, New York would remain a closed primary. I know a lot of people don't support that. We don't think we have the votes in the state committee. Actually, I know we don't have the votes in the state committee to do something otherwise. But if you declare that you're a Democrat, you'll be eligible to vote. And you'll be eligible to vote in a reasonable window. But if you stay in the Working Families Party, you're going to vote in the Working Families Party primary. If you're an unaffiliated voter, right, you don't have a party, you're not going to be able to vote in a primary still. I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but
Patrick,
that's kind of where we're at.
What you're proposing is, hey, if people change their mind and they want to be a Democrat, we should give them an opportunity to do that and not foreclose it at 6 months or 11 months before an election.
Let's have it at a reasonable period of time, because most people vote for the candidate. They don't vote for the party. So if there's a Democratic candidate that inspires you, you're watching the debates and you want to get involved and it's March, you still have time to join the Democratic Party before April 28th comes along, and you can make your voice heard. And we as Democrats can welcome you in with open arms, and you can become part of the progressive party that we're trying to build here in New York, that we are building here in New York.
So one last thing, Patrick, I just, because it's so absurd, I just want to make sure that I've got this right. And I want the audience to make sure it's got it right. So the Democratic Party in New York says, unless you know 11 months ahead of time, in some circumstances, we're not going to let you into the Democratic Party. We don't want you as a Democrat. We're not going to let you vote in the Democratic primaries.
That's the law is set up that basically your change of party doesn't happen until after the next general election. So if you file it today, it becomes effective on November 5th. If you file it on October 11th, it becomes effective on November 5th. Basically, you have to decide you want to change parties a year ahead of time, before most candidates have announced, before most campaigns have started, before you have the opportunity to be inspired by some of the great candidates that we think we run here in the New York State Democratic Party, like, I don't know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for instance. You know, if you're inspired by somebody that's doing such great work, you know, you don't have the opportunity to join the party and support that candidate. And we want to use these great candidates. We've got 22 of them running for president. Every one of them is better than Trump. And if you're inspired by any one of them, come join the New York State Democratic Party and support the candidate that you want, and then we can unite the party and defeat Donald Trump.
Okay, Democratic Party, shouldn't be complicated.
No, it should be democratic, right?
Yeah, it should be democratic, and you should want people in your party. LetAllDemsVote.org. Patrick Nelson, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Cenk.